Yeah.
Okay, Fayaz, go ahead. Watch for the.
Good afternoon, everyone. We will call this meeting to order. The Standing Committee of Meeting for January 12th, 2021 at 4:02 p.m. We'll begin with the adoption of the agenda. Administration, do we have any additions or changes to the agenda?
None from administration, thank you.
Council? Council, then we are looking for a motion to adopt the agenda. Councillor Waugh.
I'd move that we adopt the agenda for Standing Committee January 12th, 2021.
Thank you very much, Councillor Waugh. Council, is there any discussion on that? Seeing none, then I will call that to question. All those in favor, please indicate. Very good. And that is carried unanimously. We will move on to our first item of the evening, and that's Citizens Minute with Council. And we do have a citizen joining us this evening, and that's Ms. Chris Haslett. Chris, we'd like to welcome you to Council.
Thank you.
So we'll turn it over to you.
Okay, great. Hi, my name is Chris Haslett. I own, manage, and work at both Insignia Salon and Spa, as well as Trademark Hair Company in Jasper. On behalf of myself and my fellow small business community owners, I am bringing forth concerns regarding the provincial state of emergency restrictions placed on small business. Since the first lockdown in March until now, January 2021, my business has been closed for a total of 90 days. That's 3 months of lost revenue that supports our families, our municipality in a myriad of ways, and the ripple effect is vast. Currently, between my two businesses, I have 22 employees laid off, and that's not including owners. In consideration of the number of recent daily cases we currently have in Hinton, I believe small businesses should be permitted to open and staff should get back to work with all necessary COVID-safe precautions in place. And that this decision and all future decisions like this should be determined at a municipal level and not a provincial level. I invite each of you participating here today to take action for your community and our local economy and ensure our small businesses are permitted to reopen to support our employees, their families, and our collective community. Thank you so much for considering my request and for permitting me to join you virtually today. I look forward to hearing back on the actions that you take on behalf of me and all of the small businesses here in Hinton.
Perfect. Chris, thank you so much. Just so you know, Chris, traditionally the Minute with Council isn't the time where we do an engagement back and forth. That being said, you bring up a really important issue, obviously, economically, and I'd like to invite you to reach out to Council through council at hinton.ca. I think that's an excellent point of contact because I know that's something that I'd like to talk about more, and I'm certain the rest of Council would find sort of a deeper understanding of what impacts you've been facing would be. So thanks for spending your time to come out and talk to us about that today.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for your time, guys.
Thanks, Chris. Council, moving on to our delegations and presentations. Our first delegation of the evening is the COVID-19 survey results 2020, presented by Ms. Christensen and Mr. Meir, the Community Engagement and Advisory Committee. So we'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Ryan. Before I start, I just wanted to say good afternoon, and I'm going to load the presentation. So hopefully I have screen share capabilities. Oh, this one. Can everyone see that? See a few nods, that's great. So, good afternoon, everyone. Before I start, I just wanted to thank the Mayor, Council, and Town Administration for providing time for SEAC to present the findings from the COVID-19 survey, community survey. On a personal note, I also wanted to thank all of you for your leadership over the last 9 months. I don't think anyone expected to have to lead through a global pandemic, so thank you everyone for all that you've done. Much appreciated. So this is a screenshot of our committee. And for those of you who might be live streaming in and aren't familiar with SEAC, it's the Community Engagement Advisory Committee. We're a group of volunteers and we're appointed by Town Council to engage with Hintonites. So going from left to right, top to bottom, there's myself, Donna Christensen, the co-presenter Fayez, our board or our committee chair, Jalen Bertolin, our newly appointed vice chair, Jace Rush. In the center of the tic-tac-toe is our councillor rep, Tyler Waugh. Over to the right is Garth Griffiths, and our town administrative rep is Heather Way. And we have 2 people missing from the screenshot, so Pastor Doug Heine and former Mayor Ross Griswold. So today in this presentation, I'll be guiding you through the report and highlighting some of the findings. I think you've all been given a copy of the complete report, so if you have it handy, feel free to follow through with that. And also, before I get going, I want to have a little bit of a disclaimer. So we're all volunteers, and the results that we're sharing with you are just one of many channels that the town has for providing feedback from the community. This is the second year SEAC has undertaken a community survey. In May 2019, we asked Hinton, what do you see as the top 3 concerns you have that the community should focus on to improve the quality of life in Hinton? Some of you might remember that. This year, we're asking for thoughts and opinions on how well the town of Hinton and council and administration responded to the global pandemic. So just a quick summary of the report. We had 266 respondents, and the respondents were feeling the negative effects of social and physical distancing and exhibited a concern for the economic health of small businesses in Hinton. The majority of the respondents also felt that the town of Hinton administration and council response to the pandemic was appropriate and related information was easily accessible. Measures to support local businesses and community mental health would be priorities based on these findings. A little bit of an overview of the survey. The survey ran from November 5th to the 29th, and SEAC members circulated a SurveyMonkey questionnaire both online and paper-based through their personal and professional networks, as well as some high traffic areas within the town of Hinton. There's 24 questions in total. Most of the questions were multiple choice questions, so short answer, yes or no questions are answered on a sliding scale. We did have 4 short answer questions, which provided a little bit richer data for us to look at. All the questions are available in Appendix A, if you want to take a look at. So a quick look at our respondent demographics. Over half were between 45 and 65 years old. 77% of the respondents were female and 95% lived in Hinton. The remaining 5% were from the county. 75% of people did not live alone. So I'm going to go through fairly quickly the multiple choice questions just because we have an awful lot to cover here in 10 minutes. So 75% of the respondents were aware that the COVID-19 requirements to enter town facilities. About 45% were aware of alternative to on-site visits to town buildings. So things such as phoning in, video conferencing, curbside pickup, or appointments. And 45% were aware of which facilities were open to the public and what hours they were open. So question 4 actually asked how people got their information. So I'm just going to highlight that a little bit. It's not in the presentation. 50% of respondents got some of their information through word of mouth. Another 20 to 30% indicated that they used the town website, town Facebook page, building signage, and the voice as their means of getting information. 70% of respondents thought the town of Hinton did a good job sharing information regarding COVID-19. 65% felt that appropriate actions were taken to respond to COVID-19. And overall, 65% of respondents felt that Hinton as a community responded well to COVID-19. 75% believe that the town of Hinton cares about their health and safety. And 22% expressed feeling lonely, disconnected, or socially isolated throughout the pandemic. An additional 40% felt this way some of the time, and just under 40% did not have the feelings of loneliness or disconnection during. So on to the first of our 4 short answer questions. These are just real snapshots of the answers to the short answer questions, and all the responses are available in Appendix B, which starts on page 14 of the report. So question 7 asked, which buildings or facilities I think carry the most risk for me and my family? 54% of the respondents felt that the recreation center or part of it, such as the arena or pool, were the town facilities that carried the most risk. 12% indicated grocery stores to be where they felt they had the most risk in non-town of Hinton buildings. Question 13 asked, what was the most challenging aspect of this pandemic for you and your family? 41% indicated that isolation, lack of social events, and social interactions for themselves and their families was the most challenging. An additional 3% stated that mental health for themselves or others was also a concern. 16% of the respondents shared concerns that others were not following the rules. Mask, physical distancing, and public space, that sort of thing. So this next question, question 18, is one that SEAC would really like to highlight for town administration and council. So this one asks, what questions do you have about COVID-19 and its impacts on our town that you would like to have answered? So 2 of the most common questions were regarding enacting the mask bylaw and its enforcement. Can the town make sure that businesses and customers abide by rules and laws? Why did it take so long to enact a mask bylaw? Interestingly, on November 20th, the mask bylaw was passed by town council, and it was partway through the survey. So you kind of see that in some of the answers. They kind of shift after that date. It's very interesting. There were several questions regarding the economic and healthcare consequences of the pandemic. Here are a few of them. Will there be any financial help, tax breaks, for residents facing hardship due to the pandemic? How will Hinton respond if community spread overwhelms our healthcare system? And the final short answer question, do you have any other feedback that you'd like to share regarding the town's response to COVID-19? 28% acknowledged the town of Hinton was doing good work. 8% reflected that they thought the town of Hinton had been too strict or went overboard. And 4% asked for more signage and ways of sharing information. Again, these are just little snapshots of the feedback, so please feel free to peruse through all the responses available in Appendix. So of course, we came up with a few recommendations, 6. So just quickly to go through them. The first recommendation is to answer publicly the questions posed by citizens in question 18. Recommendation 2, use as many channels as possible when communicating with residents. Recommendation 3, share how the town of Hinton is supporting local business. Recommendation 4, create and share ways the town of Hinton is helping with social isolation and mental health concerns. Recommendation 5, how can the division in the community be addressed? And the final recommendation is, it's kind of an interesting thing. So we based our survey off an internal survey done by the town of Hinton with their employees. So some of the questions do overlap. So it might be interesting to just compare the 2 surveys and see where there's similarities and differences. The final slide just ties our findings to the community sustainability plan. Our terms of reference do align us with the community sustainability plan, but I'm not going to go into this in very much detail. So have a look in the report if you want to get a little bit deeper. So thank you for your time. I'll take any questions now if you have any. And also, I think if you have a lot of questions, SEAC is more than willing to set up a time to sit down and answer more fully the questions and go over the report. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Donna. If I could just get administration to stop the presentation so that I could see all the speakers in the room, and then I'll see if there's any questions.
Well, I think I might have to do.
Oh, okay, Donna, thanks.
There we
Oh,
go.
awesome. Thank you so much. The limitations of Zoom in our new world.
The control.
Right? Oh, yeah, or the controls. Thanks so much for taking your time to come speak with us. Council, do you have any questions or comments for Donna?
I think I left you about 10 seconds for questions. So.
It was excellent. Thank you so much. No, then Donna, on behalf of council, thank you so much for taking the time, with yourself and SEAC to do the work, to look into exactly what the feelings of some of our community's members are, and to share that with us as a council. I know that's certainly helpful, and it builds on, the networks that we have. Having a look at what SEAC's bringing to the table builds on that web, so that really we're having more comprehensive information that ultimately that just helps us make better decisions. So thank you so much for your time and effort.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Well, then we will move on to our next delegation this evening. And that's our audit planning report for the year ended December 31st, 2020, presented by Robin Eason and Caitlin Cox from KPMG. So I will turn it over to Robin.
Great. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Happy New Year. Thanks so much for having us. What we wanted to do today was just take a quick 10 minutes to quickly run through the audit plan for the 2020 year. We've already begun the planning process. We've had some good conversations with the finance team already, and we've actually started some interim work. In the past, we've always provided our audit plan to you, and I think it's just come forward as an information item. And then I've had a phone call with the mayor to go through the plans. This year, we just wanted to add some formality, given that we won't have the opportunity to likely meet in person. We did want to just be a little more deliberate in going through the plan and getting your feedback at this stage in the process. So not expecting anything earth-shattering, but just, like I said, wanted to add a bit of formality to this. So we will take the report as read. Caitlin will highlight a few items, and then we'd be happy to answer any questions or take your feedback on the 2020 audit. So with that, I'll pass it over to Caitlin, and I will pop myself onto mute.
Thanks, Robin. So I think Wendy was going to share her screen so we all could see our report. And my plan, as Robin mentioned, is just to flip through the audit planning report for the 2020 year end, and it just summarizes our approach, scope, and then the timing of our procedures. I will assume that you've had the opportunity to read the report and won't go into too much detail and just highlight your attention to some of the key points or changes from the previous year. And I'll do this by focusing on our executive summary. So if we can flip 2 pages into it. There you go. So the purpose of our audit is to express an opinion on whether the financial statements are prepared in all material respects with Canadian public sector accounting standards. Our external reporting responsibilities are laid out on this page as well, and they are consistent with previous years. So in the current year, this includes the audit of the consolidated financial statements of the town, the audit of the municipal financial information return, and as well as some special reporting on the Family, Community and Support Services grant and the Government Center Statement of Additional Rent. We do also do a separate engagement on the West Yellowhead Regional Waste Management Authority, and these financial statements are ultimately consolidated in or included in the town statements that get presented to you at the end of the year. We highlight here a section on independence and would like to confirm that we are independent from the town, which is required from our professional standards. The next section here is materiality. So our audit is designed to detect material misstatements and errors in the financial statements that individually or in aggregate, so when grouped together, are material. In other words, this means we're looking to identify items that, if unadjusted, would impact the decision of the users of the financial statements. The materiality for 2020 has been established at 860,000, which is consistent with the benchmark we were using last year. Essentially, what this means is that adjusted and unadjusted misstatements greater than 43,000, if any, and any other audit findings, including performance improvement observations, will be reported to council at the conclusion of our audit in the audit findings report. In the second column here, we highlight our areas of audit focus. So our audit testing responds to audit risk, and our audit procedures are designed to reduce this risk. Our audit risks and other areas of focus on specific accounts and balances largely remain unchanged from last year. So I'm just going to highlight the two key items. The first is that professional standards presume the risk of fraudulent revenue recognition and the risk of management override of controls exists in all organizations. We have rebutted or challenged the risk of fraudulent revenue recognition in the audit of the town, but we cannot do this for the risk of management override of controls. So we address this through certain procedures, which include our journal entry testing, a review of estimates, and any significant unusual transactions. The one item on our radar for 2020 with regards to large transaction would be the transfer of the golf course assets to the town, and we've already been looking at this with management. The next section of this highlights COVID-19 and other current developments. We have incorporated the financial and operational impacts of COVID-19 into our audit plan. We have worked with management to develop a plan that will allow us to continue to work remotely as required to ensure we're able to issue our audit report in a timely manner and don't experience delays as a result of any work from home requirements. Our attention with respect to COVID-19 will be ensuring we understand any changes in internal controls that stem from the remote work environment, any new financial or operational risks that have arisen, and this would include the impact of COVID-19 on the IT environment or any cybersecurity related items. As we progress through our work, we'll work with management to ensure any of the financial implications or key changes in the year are appropriately disclosed in the financial statements. We don't need to flip to it, but for your reference, on page 8 of our report, we have included a detailed outline of our audit cycle. At this point, as Robin mentioned, we have completed our planning and interim work, and we will begin our remote year-end work on March 22nd. We do understand the timelines and are prepared and are organized to report the financial results prior to the required date of May 1st, 2021. So in sum, that's a high-level overview of our report, and I know it was extremely high level. So if you have any questions, comments, concerns, we'd be happy to address them at this time.
Perfect. If you wouldn't mind, whoever's presenting, if we could click stop the presentation. Again, there's that limitation of Zoom. Council, do you have any questions? No. All right. Well, seeing none, then please, accept our thanks for the presentation. And honestly, we look forward to getting more information as we proceed through the audit cycle. So thank you so much for your time this evening.
Great. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
See ya.
Bye.
Council, we are moving on to our third delegation and presentation for the evening, and that is the Hinton Skate Park Planning, presented by Mr. Jay Hoare and Everett Tetz. So we'd like to welcome you gentlemen this evening. Jay, welcome, and we'll turn it over to you.
Hello, how are you guys? Am I muted? Of course I'm muted.
Nope, you're fine.
Oh, every time. I think we're just waiting for Everett here, I believe. He's just texting me. It's all right. Let's go down. He just texted me, said he's on, so I don't know. Maybe he's got to get let in or something.
Is he under Trevor Morgan?
I don't know. Maybe try it. You can always kick him out.
Okay, here we go.
Oh.
Hello there. Can everyone hear me?
You betcha we can.
Awesome.
Perfect.
See Jay's on there.
So Everett, sorry, you weren't in the meeting. I'd just like to welcome both you and Jay this evening, and council's looking forward to your presentation. So we'll turn it over to you, fine gents.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for having us. I know this is the second time we've had a chance to chat with council in regards to an all-wheel park or a new all-wheel park in Hinton. And Jay and I have sort of been working behind the scenes over the last year since the last time we spoke. And I know that there's some new developments we would like to update you on, and then just talk a little bit about the importance of site confirmation in terms of this process, and allowing Jay to move forward with all of the hard work that he's doing on fundraising and looking for in-kind donations. So thanks for having us. I know right now is a weird time everywhere, and we're all making the best of it, but I hope you're all well. So I think if we can get into the next slide, we'll give a little bit of an overview. So once again, my name is Everett Tates. I do community outreach for New Line Skate Parks. And sort of where I've come into this is just helping Jay with some of the initial planning that he's doing as he continues his advocacy for a all-wheel park in Hinton. Jay reached out, and we've sort of been in discussions around, project considerations, target budgets, ideal square footage, and then also just a matter of kind of what's possible or what we're seeing trending in all-wheel parks. And then I know, Jay, you're going to give a little introduction to the All-Wheel Park Association.
Yep. Yeah, so I think last time we met, guys, I was the president of the Hinton Mountain Bike Association, and we were planning to take this on as kind of an outreach and using that name and that brand and the success we've had with that association. Since then, we've had a turnover in the executive and made the club sustainable, and that was my goal. So they've gone in they've focused on the Bighorn Trail Network, and they've been really successful. So at the time, we decided to take my energy and form the Hinton Wheeled Park Association, which we are now a nonprofit society. And that way we're not fighting each other for grant money, which could happen. So the current mountain bike executives doing their thing and doing really well. And then I'm leading this project and working with Everett on it. So looking forward to your guys' support on it.
So I'll do a really quick overview of New Line Skate Parks. I know last year's presentation for many of you, it's a bit of an overlap. So I don't want to bore you with those details. And then we can get into some of the more important information when we're talking about, potential sites and the development process. So if you don't mind hitting the next slide. So New Line Skate Parks, we're a full design and construction firm specializing in integrated site-built concrete skate parks. We've done about 350 now, I think just over 400 skate parks throughout North America, based out of Calgary, Alberta. We have a big presence here in Alberta, and this is our home. Recent projects that are currently active, we're looking at Jasper, St. Paul, Bruderheim, Fort Saskatchewan. We've seen a huge trend, even within the last 5 years, an increased desire for all-wheel parks and skate parks. I think one of the things that this pandemic has sort of exposed is the importance of outdoor venues for kids to recreate, where they can socially distance, be safe, but also be outside. If we're looking at the industry as a whole, skateboarding, biking, rollerblading, there's been a huge increase in sales of equipment. So we have to assume there's way more participants taking part in these activities. And now we're sort of playing catch up to make sure that they have adequate, up-to-date, modern facilities to do so. So certainly in Canada, we're the leaders in concrete skate park and construction. So if we want to go to the next slide, we've got about 60 staff across North America. Like I said, we're based right out here at Calgary. We do a number of international projects with nonprofits around the world. Skate parks, all-wheel parks are our passion. We all grew up skating or biking, and this is why we got into it. Within our team, we have full-service landscape architects, engineers, planners that bring a comprehensive approach. Next slide. We really pride ourselves on inclusive consultation. So the final product or the park is really a result of that community consultation process, ensuring all stakeholders are included in this process. That's going to be critically important, as we move forward and talk about the potential site for a new all-wheel park in Hinton, is how do we fully include the user group and get their input on what they would like, but also the non-active users, local residents, community members that are likely going to have ideas or opinions regarding this space. Next slide. So big thing, again today, I know Jay and I and Heather have talked quite a bit leading up to this. The biggest desire in the short term is to confirm that site and free Jay up to start looking for donations and doing the fundraising that he has set out to do. Early on, or the last time we presented, we created a bit of an evaluation criteria. I know we were looking at about 4 sites in the town of Hinton. And through that evaluation criteria and sort of ranking each, we ended up with sort of settling on Erith Park as an ideal space to develop. And we'll walk you a little bit through that evaluation, but that's been a big part of this process. Next slide. I'm not going to walk you through the development process because it's a little bit premature, but just the key things to highlight here is that all of our design comes out of community consultation and ongoing feedback from the community. Our key goals through this process is definitely educating the community on what a modern all-wheel park environment looks like. And then again, building consensus throughout the community on what that space is going to look and function like. Next slide. So looking at the neighborhood context, there are some really key elements that we look for when analyzing a site. And that really comes down to what is the current context of the park? What are the surrounding elements? Is it accessible? Is it visible? What's the existing infrastructure that's either going to lend itself well to development or going to impede development? Ideally, in any all-wheel park development, all of the money that is going towards the project is staying above ground, and we're not having to go, rebuild underneath the park just to make it suitable for development. We want all of that budget to be going to the park itself. Next slide. One of the most recent developments and something that is definitely progressing is the integration of green space, natural rock and plants, along with any elements that are going to match the natural aesthetic of the area. So we want this park to fit in to Hinton, not only as a usable space, but also aesthetically, that it matches the local environment and mimics some of the surrounding area, just to keep it, aesthetically in line with some of the other park elements in Hinton. Next slide. we can look towards collaborating with local artisans on signature elements of the park that pay homage to some of the history of Hinton. And these are just a few examples, whether it's the textbooks at the University of British Columbia, a sort of mimicked rail line in Winnipeg, or in the bottom right, looking at First Nations art, paying tribute to local culture. Next slide. We can skip this one as well. Under recognition, and just calling attention to, I know Jay is looking at in-kind donations as a potential large portion of this development. And you want to make sure that you've integrated space in the park, to pay tribute to the people that help make it possible. So there's lots of tactful and unique ways to integrate recognition to those donors. Next slide. And we'll go to the next slide again. And next slide. Ultimately, we want this to be a functional youth space in Hinton for years to come. And a huge part of that is, post-occupancy, what happens in that space once a park is built. And myself, I'm a former educator. I was a vice principal of a middle school before getting into skate parks. And I've really poured a lot of my attention and effort into programming, things like developing curriculum, working with Canada Skateboard to help train skateboard coaches, and really try to highlight and showcase what is possible in a integrated skate park or all-wheel park. The more programming elements you have in a space, the better it's going to function into the future. And it really changes the dynamic of that space and what's possible. Next slide. And we're sort of bringing it back now, specific to Hinton and discussing Erith Park and the importance of, at this phase of the project, really establishing a site. Now, when we say establish a site, that doesn't mean anything is set in stone. It doesn't mean that things can't change down the road, but a big part of Jay's process now, when he's looking for and going through grant applications, is the one thing that they're looking for is that a site has been established, and there's a concrete plan moving forward. So if we can go to the next slide. This was the site analysis that was presented last year to council, and some of the considerations that were made when examining Erith Park as a potential site. And so, we've looked at compatibility, accessibility, appropriate size, and really got a basic lay of the land. And at the end of that, sort of determined that definitely Erith Park is a strong potential site. There's no obvious impediments to development. And from our perspective, it lends itself well to a future all-wheel park. Next slide, please. So again, it's compatible, good proximity to pedestrian routes. It's got an appropriate offset in terms of sound attenuation from local residential, an achievable footprint. It's highly visible. It's got good access to additional amenities. And in this case, looking at the overall parks master plan, I think it's a good opportunity to reappropriate the space of Erith Park, which currently, according to the data, is a bit of an underutilized park itself. So, next slide. So referencing the Parks Open Space and Trails Master Plan that was conducted last year, it notes Erith Park within that plan, and some of the data on the next slide, if you want to go to that, talks about usership of that park. and you know, the number of attendees that have used that park 1 to 5 times, 6 to 10 times, 11 to 20. And in comparison to some of your larger parks, definitely, you know, an underutilized space, and therefore a potential opportunity to reappropriate and reactivate that community space within the larger plan. Next slide. Notes gaps or opportunities for parks and open spaces. Here it notes an amphitheater outdoor near Beaver Boardwalk or at Erith Park. So when talking about, you know, a potential all-wheel park development within Erith Park, we really look at that. That could be a catalyst for a redevelopment of the entire space, whether it's an amphitheater, an upgraded playground. There's a lot of things that could reactivate that space, and we would want to make sure that any all-wheel park development has continuity with any future planned developments or any existing infrastructure. So the existing infrastructure we're looking at now is the outdoor rink space and the current playground that lies on that footprint. Next slide. So noted in the Parks Master Plan, Erith Park in need of upgrades, maintenance, planning strategies, wayfinding, a potential fitness program. Just looking at the overall master plan, we think an all-wheel park could complement any of these strategies to activate that space. Next slide. So one of the issues that was brought to our attention from municipal staff was, you know, potential parking concerns with the reactivation of Erith Park. Just looking at the site sort of as is, you know, we believe that that may be able to be addressed within the current footprint of Erith with the reappropriation of some of that space into parking space. It's a fairly adequate footprint. And I think there's no reason why you couldn't add, you know, 10 to a dozen parking stalls within that space. It would just have to be a further budget consideration of the project. So between adding some parking space, you know, addressing connectivity with existing pathways leading up to that space, we believe that we could address that within the overall site plan so that parking in nearby residential wasn't an issue that needed to be considered. I know there was talk of moving or upgrading the existing playground. And so if that were to occur, I think it would make an ideal spot to develop some parking within that space. Next slide. So again, this is just an overview of one of our larger park developments. And what I sort of want to highlight in this image is the connectivity between amenities. And so Erith Park is quite a bit smaller, but there's no reason why we can't apply the same principles as we did here at the Forks in Winnipeg of connecting activities within that park through using the all-wheel park as a catalyst. And so it can completely sort of reinvigorate and reappropriate an area which I know you're looking to do within your parks master plan. Next slide. So here's just a close-up of ways to integrate local vegetation, texture, and different materials to match the aesthetic of the surrounding area, which would be no different than what we look to do in Hinton. Next slide. Here's a recent project completed in Banff in 2018, and has really become, you know, a major destination skate park. And you can sort of see that mountain backdrop, integrated planting, integrated landscape, has really, I think, highlights the potential of what's possible in a modern all-wheel park space. Next slide. Again, here's just a conceptual overview of a skate park we did in Airdrie. And again, this really just highlights and goes to show the connection between a variety of amenities. And so looking at an all-wheel park in Erith would really give an opportunity to examine the overall site and see if there aren't some complementary amenities that council might prioritize to further develop that space. And next slide. So I know that was really quick and it covered a lot of material, but we really wanted to leave enough space for questions for Jay and myself. Yeah, I think the overall hope here is that you know, council will allow Jay to move forward with some of his hard work and his fundraising, you know, by assisting in establishing a site to move forward with.
Perfect. Well, gentlemen, thanks so much for the presentation. Council, do we have any questions? I'll start with Councillor Race.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have several questions. One is you speak to an all-wheel park. What's the difference, an all-wheel park and a skateboard park?
So an all-wheel park is a result of the evolution of sport, as we say. You know, it all started with skate parks 20 years ago, and we know that has now progressed to skateboarding, bikes, rollerblading, and scooting. So we just want to be really inclusive of the entire user group. And we want to design the park with all of those elements in mind, not just skateboards.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chair, I do have other questions, but I certainly can wait.
Perfect. Thank you. We do have other councillors in queue, so we can come back to you. We will go to Councillor Nelson next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just curious, in a ideal world, what would the municipal contribution be for the capital of the project?
I'm going to let Jay speak to that as he's taken on the bulk of the financial responsibility here.
Zero. We would fundraise. Is that the right answer, Everett? It'd be similar to, you know, the bike park. I know you guys donated to that and helped us get going, but we'd be looking for grants and in-kind and matching, and we would fund it, funnel the money through the Hinton Wheel Park Society, hire Everett and his team, manage it that way, and then after substantial completion, we hand over the keys and the town owns it. So we'd do it all and hand it over. And that's the model that pretty much every municipality has. Obviously, if the town does have budget to help us get going with matching grants and stuff like that, and that's where Everett said, you know, we could leverage, if you're looking at redesigning that area, we can use some of that redesign money to help leverage and get the initial matching funds going. But, you know, the bulk of it, we handle it. Everett's team builds, designs, everything. We use local in-kind support, local contractors, and we give you guys the keys when we're done.
Good. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks. I believe I had Councillor Hawes next. Just want to double check.
Yeah, that's correct. Thanks, Mr. Chair. I'm just curious, you said there was 3 other spots you were looking at around town, and I'm not saying at all that Erith Park isn't the best suited place, but what were the other 3 spots in town, out of curiosity?
Again, I might have a better understanding on that.
I can take that one. There was a green space down by the backside of Gels, kind of where the senior lodge is being built now. There's kind of a sliver there. That is currently not really zoned for, it's kind of like a park res, but it's a green field, right? So there'd be quite a bit of development, trees, blah, blah, blah. And now with the bigger and, you know, the old folks home there getting built, I don't know what the deal is there now. And there's another chunk of land up by St. Gregory, or no, St. Gregory, Gerard Redmond, on the east end of the soccer field where there's some underutilized benches. That's kind of a neat chunk for a smaller park. And there's a potential kind of, there's another green space in East Hardisty as well. But Aerith, with the facilities and the zoning and everything, it's pretty much a slam dunk, but there are other spaces, just be a lot more work and red tape.
Yeah, and I was like, I mean, when I look at Aerith itself and, you know, and the accessibility of it and, you know, being also close to downtown and, you know, having a convenience store not far from it. I mean, there's lots of great reasons to have it there. I was just curious in the other areas. And by the sounds of it, those are a lot smaller pockets of land as well when you compare it. So there's a lot more opportunity and a lot more different, I guess, room to put the equipment that's necessary. So, okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Haas. Council, I do apologize. I think it was like 3 of you put your hands up at once. I had Councillor Nelson, Councillor Haas. Prior to going back to Councillor Race, was there another hand? Councillor Waugh, thank you. And Councillor Ostashik. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess my question, I'm curious about the timeline. Say we did finalize the site selection. What would the timeline be for the project from here on in?
So I think that really comes dependent on the fundraising efforts and success on things like grant applications. You know, a skate park isn't conceived or built in a day. It's a process. And luckily throughout that process, through conceptual design, technical design and engineering and construction, all of those things are sort of billed to the client as it develops. So a huge task for Jay would be to get through the conceptual and technical design. That puts him in a really good place to start leveraging quantities of material moving forward to construction as in-kind donations. And so, you know, a typical conceptual design process takes up to 16 weeks, technical design about 12 weeks. And then the construction of a facility of around the scale can take anywhere from 12 to 14 weeks. But again, it's all dependent on funding in place for each phase. Luckily, through a design build process, nothing moves on before the client is happy with the result, but also that the funding for the next phase is in place. So timeline is very much dependent on the success of that fundraising effort.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Councillor Waugh. Councillor Ostashik, then Councillor Race.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have a question for administration or one of the members of the all-wheel committee. I'm not sure who's best to answer it, but I appreciate hearing that the group is going to take the leadership role on supervising construction, moving it forward, and basically running it through to completion. There's definitely advantages that can be realized through that type of arrangement. Sometimes in the past, though, we've had other projects where the community has undertaken the construction of them and then handed over to the town at some point later, at which point there's discoveries of some deficient engineering or substandard construction that has to then be brought back up to a different standard. So I guess my question is, what's typical regarding cooperation between the nonprofit that's building it and the municipality that's taking it over in the future to assure that there isn't going to be a bunch of inherited concerns when the town does take it over?
So I know In previous projects similar to this, when working with a nonprofit or a local group, typically there will be an appointed project manager from the municipality that is involved through every stage of the development. And I really think that is critical to the overall success of the project, because you're absolutely right. You want to be involved through the development process to ensure what you're inheriting is to the standard that you desire and require. 99% of our clients are the municipalities. This isn't the typical skate park development approach. More typically, we're working directly with the municipality from the onset. But in this case, because Jay is taking on the bulk of the fundraising effort, we would just encourage that someone from the municipality is appointed as a project manager to oversee the development from your side.
If I could follow up, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Sorry, I would appreciate if somebody from administration could speak to it too, with what they perceive the arrangement would be between the town and the nonprofit, and if this moves forward.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I will defer to Ms. Way to elaborate. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue Wilson, through to the remainder of council, Jay and Everett. Yeah, so part of the civic agency process is that we've done a lot of that vetting already. We've connected with Everett to understand what types of things they do as part of the construction. We've also assigned for all of 2021 myself to assist in carrying this project forward in collaboration with Jay as part of the civic agency process that we established at the end of last year. We also have Hans Van Claveren, who will be offering support as the Parks and Rec manager. And then as we make our way further along the road, perhaps in 2022, different individuals from different departments as needed will be required. And many of those details are included within the administrative report that is following this item shortly.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stashik. Councillor Race.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is for Jay. Jay, I've talked to a fellow on our Hinton Youth Council, and he says that our skate park down at the rec center is one of the best he's ever seen. So what steps are you going to take to ensure that our youth are heard in regards to this all-wheel park?
Like Everett said, we right from the get, we involve all user groups in part of the design, and that's the beauty of it. No two skate parks are alike, because what the community and the kids and the users, you know, from scooter kids to skateboarding to older guys that skateboard, they all bring a different point of view. I really want to focus on the accessibility side of it too. I think that's an underserved area of this town. Accessibility for you know, handicap users or whatever, just in general. But yeah, exactly. The youth kids are the ones that they're going to be using it. But that's the whole point, is getting the input. The nice part, the modern plaza style complements the existing. It doesn't replace it. It'll be a totally different experience and a different offering, different way to progress compared to our current one. So they'll complement each other perfectly. And a modern one will blow everyone's minds what it can offer. But for sure, that's the whole point, is of community engagement all the way through.
May I follow up, please, sir?
Yes, please.
So Jay, you know, in interacting with the youth, would it be going to the, you know, once COVID is over, if it is ever over, would it be going to our current skate park and speaking to these kids? Would it be going into the schools? Would it be Facebook? How do you see yourself interacting with them and getting their input?
Well, the easy way in is my son's turning 14 and he skateboards, so that's my into that age bracket. And yeah, hit once we get we hit the ground running. We hit it with social media. We chat with there's a whole group of dads that are skateboarders that are starting to bring their, 5, 6, 10-year-old kids into the fold, right? So you just, the best thing to do is go down and skateboard and connect with kids there and explain what's going to happen. And my son in high school, just that alone will help too, right? So direct involvement is the best way. Get down there and do it with them.
Thank you, sir. And Ryan, I have one very, very quick question.
Go ahead.
Would there be a washroom facility at the all-wheel park?
Yes, currently there's an outhouse facility as part of our, I guess, research of each area. So there is and talking with council or administration, it's in the books to upgrade that, and it desperately needs to be upgraded, and that's part of it. Whatever it mentioned, that by doing this project, it might, fast track a couple of those upgrades or redesign, and we could leverage each other's projects to make it a better facility. But yes, there's existing pretty much a glorified outhouse, but for sure the hope would be to have a better washroom facility for sure.
And I do have one more question, but I will save it.
Hey, thank you, Councillor Race. I'll put you back in queue. I have the mayor next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, Jay and Everett, thanks so much for specifically, I really see this, and I think what we probably all do, is similar to the bike park. We have other communities who are sort of copying Hinton. Edson just built theirs, and I see this is going to be something in the next 10 years other municipalities will try to mimic. So my only concern was, answered by Councillor Stashik's question. We have something in place to work side by side with not-for-profit. So I would really just want to thank you for bringing the vision and almost presenting us with something that's going to add so much to our community. I look forward to supporting it and just checking in with the community, making sure that the area is best suited for our community, which I think it is, but we'll, just getting that feedback is an important step. And I look forward to supporting the motion, coming up shortly. So thanks again for your vision and your hard work.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We will go over to Councillor Waugh.
I'll defer, Mr. Chair. My question's been answered.
Perfect. Thank you, Councillor Waugh. Councillor Hawes.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess my question is to, be both to administration and to the group. So our current skate park, I think it's, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it is coming to the end of life at some point. I'm not sure how long, but would we be looking at this as potentially a replacement for the current, so when it ends life, that we're not constructing another, or where are we at in regards to the other skate park, the older skate park, I guess?
Sorry, Mr. Chair, is it okay if I chime in?
Yes, by all means.
So I'm not sure if Ms. Way might be able to provide some context to that question. I know that through the process with the civic agencies and taking a look at this proposal with our senior leadership team, we did discuss future plans for that area. I can't speak to whether in the conversations that Ms. Way had with Jay and Everett, if they did speak to the life cycle and the kind of the end of the line for the skateboard park down at the rec center. So Ms. Way, if you have anything to add, I welcome that.
Thanks again, CAO Olson, through to the remainder of council. I suppose the most glaring piece of information that came out of our preliminary conversations with Jay is actually the advanced nature of that skate park. It's very steep. It's actually, the Parks Department has done some work on it to, for example, lower some of the rails to make it more accessible to a lot of our younger or inexperienced users. So it is still usable. People are still frequenting it on a regular basis, or alternatively, they'll, skate down in front of some storefronts and things like that, somewhere that's a little bit more along with their skill level. So that was the first thing that was really glaring. And then additional to that, it is getting old. I think it's 20-ish years in that ballpark. And we are seeing some of the, cracking and things like that, but it's nothing at this point that the Parks Department has raised any concerns about needing a full replacement on. But really, this did come forward, as Jay mentioned, as a passion project to be a little bit more accessible. So yes, there is still a bit of life, but they are kind of very different parks in concept.
If I may, Mr. Chair.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I appreciate that. The accessibility, and it's not the first time I've heard where the level of experience needed to use that park. And I know for myself, not having young ones now, but having younger ones that did skate or did scooter, it was difficult to learn in that particular skate park. So I'm glad to hear that it's going to be a more well-rounded type of facility where younger ones too. And I think, if I may too, that was one of the issues, is the older kids were at this skate park and it was sometimes kind of intimidating for the younger, which then parents would kind of hang out and they weren't too impressed with that, the older kids. So I think this is a good, definitely good fit. And I too am looking forward to the motion coming forward. I think this is a great fit for Hinton and looking to support it. So thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. I will turn that over to Councillor Race.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm fine. Thank you. No question.
Council, do we have any other questions, follow-up? Excellent. Then Jay Everett, we thank you so much. This obviously is coming up in the agenda right away in the standing committee meeting. But we do appreciate you taking your time to come out, offer us some education and some information in terms of, vision and process. It's always good to see this kind of passion project as it, was put coming forward before council, with the potential to benefit not only our kids, but our community. So thanks again for your time and your effort.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, thanks for having us. And any questions, you know how to get a hold of us. So thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Excellent. Well, then, council, we are moving on in terms of the agenda. We are on to our action items for the evening, our only action item for the evening, which is securing the land for an all-wheel park, as found on page 103 of our agenda. And this is presented by Ms. Olson, our CAO, and I will turn it over to her. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this item is before council tonight to seek direction on the assignment of the Airth Park lands for the purpose of advancing the all-wheel park project proposal. And already tonight we've had some good discussion and dialogue on that. This is one of the first initiatives to follow the processes for accessing funding through the recently, or support, I suppose, through the recently approved civic agency policy. And through that process, the newly established Hinton Wheeled Park Association did work with administration to prepare information in support of this report tonight, as well as utilize feedback from the project evaluation forum and the feedback that came through senior leadership team as this was reviewed by that group. And tonight, ultimately, in front of council, seeking support to move forward with the assignment of those lands. So that's really the next step for the group. And that's intended to support the raising of funds through grants and corporate sponsorships by securing or formally identifying a site that they can move forward on with their plans. The recommended action for this item tonight is to direct administration to bring this item forward to the February 2nd, 2021 regular council meeting for decision. In supporting this assignment, it's included in the report, but I do want to point out that council is not approving the project itself, as the proposal will come before council at a later date for decision. And as well, the securing of these lands does not prohibit other proposals from coming forward for council's consideration as well. Engagement included in, outlined in the report is led by the HWPA and New Line and supported by Town of Hinton administration as well, for the opportunity for the public to share their support or their concerns. And those processes are incorporated in the next steps as well. So at this time, if council has any questions, Ms. Way is present to help provide some clarity on anything that council might be wondering about. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Council, it's over to us potentially for questions and or directions So we'll open it up at this time. Council? I guess seeing no questions, then I'll start with one to administration. Whoever in administration wants to speak to this. To me, this seems like one of those projects where the project itself is not my concern really in any way, shape, or form. Potentially, I think this for me strikes, the tingling of the spidey senses, as it were, in terms of procedure and public engagement. What I would hate to see is a really good project get derailed potentially by a NIMBY element or a failure of the town to engage with the local citizens and get an understanding for what either support exists in the area or concerns are, right? It's that public engagement process that I'm really concerned about. Can administration speak to that procedure a little bit in terms of how it relates to the recommended action tonight?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Wade?
Thank you, CAO Olson, through to Councillor Magoon. I've had plenty of conversations, Hans and myself have, through this process with Jay and Everett. As Everett mentioned, most of the time their clients are municipalities, and they are accustomed to adapting their engagement plans as per the needs of the municipality. And one of the conversations that Hans and I have had is around the need to address that kind of NIMBY perception. And one of the recommendations that Everett brought forward was to engage in that process as soon as the land is assigned, which will allow us to pivot the project to meet the needs of perhaps any NIMBYs that do have large and loud concerns. So that's just one way. And those conversations are very preliminary at this point. We can't take those next steps or present on those until we know where we'd like to put the park so that we can engage on that matter. CEO Olson, anything to add?
CA Olson, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Oh, sorry. Not really. This was a question that came up around the SLT table for discussion about how to manage or support the engagement without indicating that a proposal had been approved or was being considered. There's still work to do on exactly what the project would look like. Timeframes. This is a longer process than we typically see with the grant and the corporate or additional sponsorship process to secure the funds to move forward even into a design phase. So there will be ample time for engagement and for dialogue with the community, and as well for Jay and Everett and administration to take a look at the concerns or the support that's being brought forward and incorporate that into additional engagement practices or updates to council should they be required.
Perfect. Thank you. I will go to the mayor next, then Councillor Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess my question for administration is, what will the report somewhat look like on February 2nd, if that is the wish of council to see?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Wade?
You cut out a little bit there, Mayor Michaels. Can you repeat that?
Yeah, no worries. I'm trying to get a better understanding of what the report for February 2nd will consist of.
I would say ultimately the report would be most of the same information. We could provide additional attachments from the presentation that occurred today so that there could be a more public facing element for those viewing from home who may be reading the agendas and that kind of thing. Of course, any direction as to what you'd like to see included in the report, welcome to receive that today.
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Nelson. Oh, Councillor, you're muted.
Yeah, the usual. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm kind of reflecting on some of the statements that were just made, and I think there's a few concerns I have. Number one, to me, this decision is the important one. If we commit this land, then ultimately we're committing to the project, and it would be really hard politically to go back. And I know legally we're not, and I know that other decisions would come, but Once the group goes out and secures fundraising with different prominent groups within the community, it would be very difficult to go backwards, which just for me makes me want to feel very confident that we can stand up, as Councillor Magoon said, to things like NIMBYism. So I guess with that, I'll ask a couple, maybe a specific question. Have we done any sort of traffic impact analysis on what that project would look like? Because that's ultimately why we've said no to other projects in the past. And looking at other projects in that area, the traffic concerns were what was one of the big reasons why it was walked back after the fact.
Administration?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do believe this has been discussed, and Ms. Way should have some information to share.
Thanks, CAO Olson, through to Councillor Nelson. Though no formal traffic count has been done at this point, that was something that was one of the main focuses of our conversations around the senior leadership table. And that kind of leads into one of the comments that Jay had made around leveraging each other's projects. So we've already made some considerations for the parking there and how we may leverage projects to address that. Of course, as we make our way down the road as this project develops, that's one of the things that we would either partner with New Line and the Wheeled Park Association to complete, or we could perhaps undertake on our own should we receive the direction from council, if that provides more clarity. But they were also given the direction, they being the Wheeled Park Association, to keep in mind that this is a neighborhood area and that it is not to be designed for large tourism. This is for our local users, perhaps day users that may pop by and do know about it. Erith Park through Post is designated as a neighborhood park, and it's very important that it remain with that signature.
Could I ask a specific follow-up or make a...
Yeah, please.
So I guess what would be the reason of committing the land first and doing a traffic impact analysis second?
CAO Olson, I'm good?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. So the reason that they need, in order to even have a design, it's my understanding that the association needs to have the land assigned so that they can start raising funds. And some of those funds may be used to do things like a traffic impact analysis. And that's been the huge crux at this point, is that without some sort of commitment from the municipality that we're willing to allow them to explore that site, it's very challenging for them to receive any funding for any of these initiatives.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Council, any, Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Although I strongly support this, and I think it's getting the feedback from the community to just confirm or see if there's any reservations on the location, I'm less concerned with the traffic impacts to that nature, because those can be mitigated with parking. There are other amenities there. But the other option for council to have in order to get that community buy-in is to perhaps bring this to a standing committee meeting in February and officially pass this March 2nd, because I do agree with Councillor Nelson. This is the biggest decision. Once we commit the land, that's generally the direction we're going with this. And I do want to make sure that residents are okay. So for the sake of I guess, doing this without reservation, that's the other option that I would be open to, is let's revisit this on the 16th of February after getting 5 weeks of community input and then officially passing it if that's the will of council on March 2nd. So just throwing that out to council is that where I'm kind of leaning now. Thanks.
I have Councillor Nelson and then myself.
Sorry, I don't know if I'm going against the chair here. I did see Ms. Way looking to chime in to respond to Mayor Michaels.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Councillor Nelson. Ms. Way.
Thank you, Chair, through to Mayor Michaels. That timeline should be accomplishable. However, I would need to speak with Everett, as he, part of this process is that they, as CAO Olson alluded to, that they lead the process and that we will support them through that. So I would like to touch base on that. And in my report, it does detail that if this assignment of the land cannot be accomplished prior to the end of Q1, that it may present some challenges for them to access certain grants and with their timelines and things like that. So absolutely it can be done. I just wanted to make sure that that was at the forefront of everyone's understanding. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Way. Councillor Nelson, did you have anything additionally?
Yep. My question it comes from during the presentation. It was talked about a small sliver of land near Pine Valley. And so it doesn't sound like there was any lens from the fact that the town owns a big chunk of land there. And I'm, again, having not a lot of time to consider this. My question comes from, we have to spend in the range of $1 million to put services into the area to the west of Pine Valley. And I wonder if it may be worth exploring the viability of putting something in there that doesn't require servicing, because I'm not sure it's going to be realistic to develop with those costs. So I guess I would feel more comfortable if they had an opportunity to explore that space. And again, that would ultimately come down to council and administration, but it just seems like a unique opportunity that could be worth exploring. So thank you.
Thank you. I have myself next. Again, I want to try and give, the movement forward on this project some real potential for success. And I was thinking about what the mayor was just speaking to in terms of procedure. What I would like to see is if this was brought back to a standing committee, I think that really is an opportune time to engage with the local landowners, to have some communication directly from the town about what the state of the project potentially is and where the discussions are at that time. Because to be fair, if I'm a local landowner and I hear that the town is thinking about it and they're looking for feedback, that has a remarkably different flavor than town council has already passed a direction on this process, and it's going to come back to a regular council. To me, if I'm somebody who doesn't keep up with politics, well, it sounds like the town has already made a decision and they're just going to plow ahead with what they want to do, rather than this is something that, council is potentially looking at. They're going to bring it back to a standing committee, and they've asked for our input. That, again, for me, that flavor is totally different, and I think much more transparent. Ideally, if we were to look at what the mayor had said, I'd be fully supportive of that. But we have to have, I think, an aggressive interaction with our public, not just passively sit back. I think there needs to be some heavy public engagement. And to that end, in order to meet those timelines that Ms. Way was talking about, it is completely possible for us to call a special meeting, to follow up on anything that needs to be actionable, assuming that the project receives some widespread public support. So that's sort of where I'm at this point in the game. I think I saw Councillor Race up next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I really, truly agree with what you're saying, Mr. Chair. My question is, how would we aggressively interact with the citizens on that street? And I'm telling you, I'm sure that they would appreciate this interaction. I'm just wondering how we would make it happen.
And then, correct me if I'm wrong, that's a bit of a direct question for me, right? Just so I can rule properly here.
I guess it is to you and also to admin, but I like what you're saying in regards to having aggressive interaction.
Well, and again, I will speak to that. I'm just ruling that that's a question for my statement. And I think this is one of those opportunities for the community to reach out by phone to our local residents. I mean, we have that information, and to say, look, this is something that's coming to council. Council would very much like your opinion on this. Here's perhaps a bit of the website information where you can get more information, or some kind of documentation that we can email and send you so that we can get that feedback. Again, what I would really like to see the town is use something like this as an opportunity to engage the public, to say, we did this ahead of the ball, rather than bring this to council and then have people who are upset because they feel like they weren't involved in the process. Because, we've seen in other projects where, after the fact, when people get the right information, they're supportive of something. rather than making assumptions and saying, well, geez, I totally had the wrong idea about what was happening here. So this is, I think, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Sorry, I don't have anybody else on the list. Councillor Nelson.
Yeah, the only other thing for me, if this was to come to regular, I think if I were to support a motion of securing this land for a specific project, and the reason I'm bringing it up now is just if there's wording that administration could potentially have in the meantime is a end date to it. Similar to other projects where we've put an end date on something. So if it's not developed by then as per what we're looking for, we have the opportunity to move on without political consequence from that. So if the wheels fall off, then we're not the bad guys in canceling it. It's, it has some sort of a deadline on it. I would really appreciate that. So thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Council, we are open for any further questions, any actions or potential recommended actions. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move that committee direct administration to bring the securing the land for an all-wheel park report to the February 16th standing committee meeting for discussion to the assignment of Erith Park lands for the purpose of advancing the all-wheel park project proposal. And if I may speak to it, Mr. Chair. I think this gets us a bit closer, gives us more time. The media is going to speak to this. We're going to do our roles as elected officials to communicate with the public. If there's an uproar, I think we'll hear it. And it buys us a bit more time. They indicated before the end of quarter 1 it would be in jeopardy. This is before quarter 1, gives us an opportunity to make a decision 2 months and 2 days in, which is well before that. And to your point, Mr. Chair, we can call a special meeting the week following in February, if possible, if that's necessary. And we get more assurances, as already alluded to make sure that everyone's behind us and we make sure that this is a success. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And then once everybody's had a chance to look at that, I will ask if we can stop presenting it. Of course, I'm limited by the presentation from seeing all speakers. Perfect, thank you. So, Council, I have myself on the speakers list next. I'm looking forward to supporting this direction. I think for myself, there's also an opportunity here to hear resounding support for the project, which is really what I'm hoping to hear before it comes back to us officially. Council, any further discussion on the direction at hand? Councillor Ostashik.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I'll be speaking in favor of the proposed direction. I think it's a good idea to press pause to be able to make sure that we're getting some appropriate feedback from our citizens on what they think about the proposal. Personally, I'm in favor of it in general, but before moving ahead, I want to make sure we're not making the mistake where we progress things down the road and that has the support of the town and of council, and only to have citizens who could be directly affected come out much later in the process, that with considerations that were not, make potentially possibly adequately considered earlier in the process, and after significant time, money, and effort is expended on a proposed project, to have it fall by the wayside because of those concerns. I'd rather get those concerns, if there are any, on the table at the start, so we can make an informed decision, give everybody the opportunity to voice their support or not, and be able to move forward with a cleaner slate from there. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Councillor Ostashik. Council, any further discussion, questions on the direction on the table? Very well, seeing none. I will ask if we could bring up, thank you so much. The following direction, I will call it to question. That committee direct administration to bring the securing the land for an all-wheel park report to the February 16th, 2021 standing committee meeting for discussion to the assignment of Erith Park for advancing the all-wheel park proposal. Council, all those in favor, please indicate. And that is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Administration, thank you for your work on that. Also, Jay, Everett, I know hopefully they're watching later. You know, we thank you for your hard work on this. We're excited to be able to bring this discussion forward to the citizens of our community. And we hope that both our residents local to that area and not local potential users use this opportunity to give council your feedback, because ultimately, you know, the more information we have at the beginning, like Councillor Ostashik said, the better. So thank you. Council, any further discussion or questions for administration on this item before we move forward? Very well. Not seeing any, we will proceed on the agenda to our discussion items. And that is on page 122 to 125 of our agenda package. And I believe, Mr. Mayor, am I turning this over to you, I believe? Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Council, I added this as a discussion item because I believe, I think the time is really now in order to set up a tax incentive program, whether it's for upgrading or expanding current businesses in town and helping them. COVID eventually is going to end, or we're going to have some form of normalcy at some point. And ultimately, this plays a significant part, not the only part, but it's one a level of interest new attractions look at when coming to a municipality. You want to build a manufacturing center, anything of that nature, retail, having a tax incentive program for the first 2, 5, 10 years, whatever it may be. It's something that we had discussed as a previous councils that just never came to fruition. And I believe let's knock off as many things we can do to increase development in our community, current and future. And that's why I brought that up. And with that being said, I will put something on the floor, and I'm open to obviously other alternatives or directions. But Wendy, I'd like to put forward that committee direct administration to bring back a report for a non-residential tax incentive program to a future standing committee. And if I can speak to it quickly, Mr. Chair.
Please do.
The other option, we've been down this road for certain things, and if it's the will of council, I'm open to it. I think getting a report and seeing what elements and what options for us to consider in order to then, if it is the will of council, to then direct administration for a request for decision or a draft bylaw. But if there's an appetite to see potentially a draft bylaw as our first conversation, that's the other thing. I thought that was maybe a bit too aggressive. But if we can get a report showing what standard practice, best practices are, what some of our neighbors are doing. And like I said, Edson passed theirs about 5 months ago. Then we can best direct administration to bring something that suits our needs in our community, which it will include a level of aggressiveness for this matter. So thank you for your time, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have Councillor Nelson.
For a clarifying question, and I may have a follow-up. Is this designed for new business and new development?
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, I think I alluded to that previously. It's for a new development from brand new. Let's say you want to start a new business, or it could be expanding. So you have a current business, but you want to increase your capital, your infrastructure. You want to double your business in size. You have a small retail center, and you want to triple it. or whatever, it could implement that. There are tax incentive programs that speak to, like I said, upgrading or brand new. And there's also other elements that some municipalities use that have a threshold saying any new investment of, let's say, $10 million or larger, $20 million. The major ones that we've been lacking to attract to Hinton, we can have elements in within a bylaw that speaks to that too. Edson's is particularly pretty simple and straightforward, but there's that's where the value of a report could speak to what you're looking for, I guess, clarification on. It could be just new stuff, or it could be new stuff and upgrading current infrastructure. Thank you.
I see there's others in the queue, Mr. Chair. I'll step away for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Nelson. Council, sorry, I haven't seen anybody else yet. Councillor Stashik, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, it's hard to know if you noted that people want to speak or not. But anyway, I'd be very much in favor of seeing this move forward to come back as a report to council. There's several lots, large pieces of property in the community, non-residential land that has been vacant for a long, long time. There's been many strategies over the years discussed on how we could potentially incentivize owners to do something with that land. I think this is a good opportunity to maybe take a look at a real option to do that. It's a good opportunity to maybe get some of those landowners and even owners of current non-residential properties to maybe take some of those thoughts that they've had about doing some major renovations or expansions or new construction and incentivize them to move on with it. The only thing that I would ask from Mayor Michaels is potentially in consultation with administration to put a deadline date on that, so we know when we could expect to have that come forward if we do move forward with that direction.
Mr. Mayor, just to confirm, are you supportive of that?
Yeah, absolutely. I would defer to administration to for them to speak to it, and then I'm amenable to adding a date to that.
Perfect, thank you. Administration, do you care to speak to that date?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So some preliminary discussion with a couple different areas within the town has taken place ahead of time prior to this item coming forward. I think depending on, I think it's possible to bring something before the end of Q1. I need to confer with members of my team and could update the action pending list for review of council next week when it comes forward. So if that's amenable, if we could include the end of Q1 as the date, and we'll fine tune that internally and update that when it comes forward next week. If there's any concerns, then we can address it at that time.
Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And with that, if I could change the motion to point out this standing committee before the end of Q1. Thank you. And thank you, Councillor Stashik, for bringing that up.
We'll just have a second to read that. And then we'll, if we can, go back to the speaker's view. I have myself in queue next. First of all, I want to express my appreciation to the mayor for demonstrating something that I think is actually, it actually requires some considerable political will. When we discussed this in our previous term, this was a measure that was fraught with a certain amount of skepticism, if not, I hate to call it hostility, but a certain amount of hostility. And I think because at that time, we hadn't seen provisions around the expansions and renovations section. So, of course, there was that very reasonable question from current business owners. Well, how is this fair to me, right? I've invested in this community already. How is it fair that somebody else gets a tax break down the road? But the existing legislation that I've looked over addresses that quite well, in that it puts everybody on an equal footing in saying from this point on, whatever you want to invest in the community is going to receive an incentive, right? And I think that's fair because, as the mayor said, that provides an avenue of somebody who's already an existing business, maybe a large business, wanting to really strike out and increase their footprint. Now's the time. Somebody who's looking to invest in the community for the first time, now's the time. So there's some real potential opportunity. This has been something I've advocated for a long time, and I'm really hoping that council will consider supporting it. I think there's some real potential there, and this is one of those cases where what's the worst that can happen? You try something and it doesn't take, or you try something and it is taken up quite well. So that's what I'm really hoping to see in this instance moving forward. So thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council, any further questions or discussion? Councillor Hawes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I too am in favor of this. When we look at our strategic plan as well, looking at inviting new businesses and everything. So I think this is a way of addressing, or at least looking at some tools that we can do to encourage building business in our community. And as Councillor Stashik said, there's lots of chunks of land out there that, have remained empty, and we need to look at how do we get those, people in those spots. So I'm totally in favor of, having that discussion, taking a look at what it might look like, and also getting some feedback, from the community with, we have some time, it's on the agenda, and hearing from the folks out there, and maybe there is, some people that show great interest, and maybe the other side of things too. So thank you, Mr. Mayor, for bringing this up.
Councillor Nelson.
I just wonder if it'd be possible to request an amendment just to clarify the motion or direction. As it stands right now, if a citizen were to look at that, they would assume that it would be for both existing and new, because it just says a non-residential tax incentive program, and it may affect whether I support, don't support, or potentially add to this motion. As much as I think it's important that we encourage new development and expansion, I think it's equally important, especially considering the struggles everybody's having today, that we also look at opportunities to support existing business, that to add a few buildings and empty out a few others, because it's tough right now. I want to see us also supporting existing non-residential businesses as well. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, did you want to speak to that?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have no problem adding after the word for a current and future, for a current and future non-residential tax incentive. I think it was in the spirit. I think administration is going to bring forward options, but to clarify, I have no problem with that, because that was the intention. Yeah, I'd go to Councillor Nelson if that appeases his concern.
Yeah, if I could, Mr. Chair, I think it's more that this tax incentive program is not something to support existing businesses in their existing form. Whether it's a tax forgiveness for a year for businesses that have had a revenue decrease, like that's not what we're looking at. We're looking at new and expanded. And I think just the motion should reflect that, so that businesses don't feel like we're going to incentivize business as usual. Because I think that would be a fair thing for people to expect, considering today's lens.
Mr. Mayor, if you want to speak to that.
Thank you. Now I better understand the intent, in case somebody thinks it's COVID related or tax. For after the word for, if we could put new and expanded non-residential, and that I think clarifies it. I can see that it could be potentially understood as a program that pertains to COVID or the current situation. So thank you.
Councillor Ostashik.
Screen changed and my unmute button moved. Yeah, just to throw a little bit more confusion into it, then I want to make sure we're not overlooking the potential of a significant renovation to an existing non-residential structure, say a hotel that's pretty much filled up as much of the developable property that they already have, but want to take advantage of the tax incentive to do a complete renovation on the facility. And I don't think the wording that was just proposed addresses that. It's new. I don't, it's not in front of me now, but it was new or expanded, I believe. So expanded doesn't really take into a significant change. So I'm not sure how that could be addressed either.
Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I would turn to administration and their understanding of it being worded, and I'm open to any wording. I see any new or expanding, any new development as being something that's brand new or something that's in addition. I guess administration, from your perspective, based on the conversation we're having, I think explicitly we're saying anybody who wants to expand something in the community, have a larger assessment that they can be, they could take advantage of a potential tax incentive program. The motion, the way it is, would that be what administration would bring forward? Or do you have any recommendations based on the concerns of the wording in order to make sure that report represents this dialogue?
DAO?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think what's helpful, or what has helped our understanding of this conversation and moving forward, is the fact that the Town of Edson's bylaw is included as an example. And under 4.3, the wording includes expansions and renovations, and also provides some guidance or caveats to that for businesses that are looking to use this bylaw moving forward. So it is my understanding, new and expanded, and the significant renovations piece included, without putting too fine a point on it, of what percentage increase to their assessment that might provide. I'm comfortable with the way that it's worded, and also taking a look at Edson's as a guide to for our research and bringing back a report with options and additional scope. If there is concern, we could include the new, expanded, or significantly renovated businesses. That gives council some comfort. However, I'm comfortable with the way that it's worded at this point.
Councillor Ostashik, that was your initial concern, so we'll go back to you to see if that's been addressed.
Yeah, I mean, I would be comfortable with adding the wording. I didn't want to lead Mayor Michael's motion, but that's exactly what I was looking at while I was making my concerns known. So I'd be comfortable adding the additions, expansions, or renovations part. But also, on the other hand, if administration is comfortable and has a good understanding of the intent, it's not a hill that I'd want to die on or anything. That's fine. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ostashik. Mr. Mayor, you had your hand up?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. No, I have no problem adding that. I think the clearer this direction is, the better. This is going to be in the public. People are going to read this sometimes without speaking to us. They won't know the whole context, because we know there's only a few people who really, watch this venue. So I'm okay with adding that. It brings more clarity, and people will have a better understanding reading it, especially in print at first glance. So thank you for that.
Perfect. Council, excellent discussion so far. Is there any further questions or comments right now on the direction on the table? Mr. Mayor?
I'm just trying to see if we can quickly see the motion.
Absolutely.
And if does that work for Councillor Ostashik?
Councillor Ostashik?
Yeah, that looks fine. Yep, thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Councillor Ostashik. Council, any further discussion or questions on the item? Very well. Seeing none, if I could have it brought back up again, please, and we'll call it to question. That committee direct administration to bring back a report for new, expanded, or significantly renovated businesses for a non-residential tax incentive program to a future standing committee meeting by March 31st, 2021. All those in favor, please indicate. And that is carried unanimously. Thank you very much, Council. Administration, thanks for your input. Councillor Nelson.
Just I guess a question. Since this direction was only really looking at new or significantly improved or changed businesses, and looking at what Edson has done, Edson has also created a, I believe, tax-free loan program through a partnership with Community Futures and the town of Edson. Should we also be looking at different ways to support our existing businesses? I'm concerned right now with the, not even the optics, just concerned with us developing bylaws and policies to bring in new when our existing are really struggling. And if there's an appetite of maybe having a discussion item, and I think for perspective as well, I've requested an update from the Economic Development Department. And I was, one of the things I'm hoping for is that maybe some of those things would be included as in looking at ways that we're supporting or plan to support existing business that is struggling. So just put it out to council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. I'll actually, I'll take the advantage to speak to that right away. I think in short, yes. I think we should as a council look at, a whole gamut of economic development activity and potentials. And perhaps this might be an opportune time to suggest to council that maybe this is a good opportunity to strike a working group that's aimed at looking at some potential easy wins in that area. Because they're certainly, a locally developed loan program is an example, just like an incentivized tax program is an example, but certainly not limited to. And so maybe a working group might be better suited over the shorter term to explore that with a little bit more specificity. That's just my thoughts on the matter. Council? Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Councillor Nelson, for bringing this up. I guess my question for administration, I thought we had put aside X amount of dollars for the budget process and something was coming forward to council for us to then decide where to allocate these funds. I know personally, my thought was to have a tax incentive program for the current businesses that have suffered, and I think other councillors that spoke to that. Any clarity on those monies, and if that is the case, when that would be coming to council for us to decide where those monies are allocated?
CEO?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through to Mayor Michaels. So that is correct. There was funds that were directed by council through year end, the surplus amounts to be brought back to council, amount of that to be brought back to council for some direction on what programs or opportunities to create through that. As far as a timeline, I'm not entirely sure when that would be coming forward. That's something that is on administration's radar as we work through year end and understand exactly how much funds we are looking at bringing to council for direction. Ms. Fox, do you have anything that you could add to that?
Thank you, CEO Olson, through to council. No, I would basically say the same thing you are, just to caution with year-end results, we still don't know the exact amount. The amount through the budget process that was put in there was 669,000, something like that, right close in there. 500,000 of that being used to offset taxation. So roughly there was $169,060 remaining to allocate. So once we get better information, that number could go up or down.
Perfect. Thank you, administration. Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to follow up, do we have a ballpark date? And I guess I'm tying this to Councillor Nelson's concern that should we, as a council, put a motion forward with information from administration on timing, or are we comfortable just waiting and getting another update in 2 or 3 weeks? The clarity on the 169.60, is that something we'll have in 2, 4, 6 weeks, or any tentative date?
Administration?
Ms. Fox?
Thank you, through to council. I don't think a motion isn't a bad idea, just if you want a separate report on it. We do have the financials for the end of December slated for February 2nd. And in that, we're going to try and do our best estimate. And it should be fairly close as to what the year-end results are going to be. So we should have an idea then. So if a report were to come after that time, that would be most appreciated from my perspective.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Ostashik.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I'm certainly in favor of continuing a discussion regarding a loan program or something like that. But because this isn't something that was on the agenda that we had any forewarning of that we were going to be discussing at all tonight, I haven't put any thought or any research into what some of those existing programs are. So if there is a motion tonight, my personal preference would be that it's a motion to add it to next week's standing committee meeting as a discussion item before we start giving direction to administration to invest time. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Councillor Ostashik. Council, any further discussion on that? Any desired direction? Seeing none, then if there isn't any further direction or discussion at this point, then we will move on. But certainly it's something that I hope we see or hear again moving forward in the future. That being said, we will proceed past our discussion item on to information items as found on pages 126 to 129 of our agenda and 130 and 132. So we are looking to adopt those information items as presented potentially, and or question or any discussion items. Council? Councillor Haas.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, is there not one more item? Sorry. The municipal internship program, I apologize.
Oh, you know what? I appreciate that. Yes, I was misreading my agenda package. I do beg council and administration's forgiveness. And thank you, Councillor Haas. We will move on to information item number 1, the municipal internship program, the 2021 intake. And I apologize for the miss. Administration?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. During the special meeting on December 15th, Council made a motion that approved the Town of Hinton's application for the internship program as presented for the 2021 and 2022 budget years, and also requested that an information item be presented on the program before the end of January 2021. The report here outlines the program timelines, the reporting relationships, and the focus for internship work, which includes health and safety, economic development, human resources, and corporate services. The total cost to the town over 2 budget years is $36,500, with the remaining amount of $43,000 provided by the Alberta Community Partnership Grant Municipal Internship Stream. At this time, if council has any questions, Ms. Hope is present as well this evening to assist in answering any of your questions. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, administration. Council, and any questions? Councillor Nelson.
I was just curious, our inaugural intern grant that we applied for was $27,500 was our contribution. So I was just curious, it's over a 30% increase of the town's cost from the last year's one. I'm just curious where the difference comes.
Administration?
Thank you. Ms. Hope, is this something that you can provide clarity to?
Sorry about that. My best answer is that these were just the requirements that the grant application had this time around to meet the recommendations on the wage and the contributions there. But I did not look at the past application amounts to see that they were different. I'm sorry.
Councillor Nelson, any follow-up? Are you good?
Yeah, I'm. It is potentially our motion for the first one was that our contribution was 27,500, and considering the current times, an increase of that percentage is something that I'm not overly comfortable with, to be totally honest. So I'm okay for right now as it's an information item, but I'll kind of let it rest for the time being. Thank you.
Thank you. Council, any further discussion on that? Or Councillor Ostashik?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And unfortunately, the rest of us don't have access to whatever it is that Councillor Nelson's looking at. So I'm looking at the numbers that we have now, and I'm just wondering if the benefits formed or didn't form part of that total last year. Because if you take the benefits of $9,500 out, it's pretty much the same.
Administration or council?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, without going back and taking a look at that full breakdown, I don't have anything to add.
Yeah, my apologies too, because I don't have anything to add either, other than supposition. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Ostashik. Okay, Councillor Waugh.
Just a question for administration, and that is, what was included in the 2021 budget?
Administration, Ms. Fox.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, through to Council. So the 2021 budget covers the total amount requested and required to cover the intern. We actually aren't spending as much as we had assumed we would due to our current intern taking on a role. Anyway, so there's a little bit excess there. The difference in reporting is that the Alberta government requested that we use more of the grant they provide up front. So the overall amount that they provide us is the exact same. It's just that they require us to use more of their grant up front and more of our money in the end. So the distribution of costs is somewhat different. I think we actually reduced the overall amount that we would be paying an intern by $10,000 as opposed to what we paid in the previous one. So overall, there is a savings. However, they give us the same amount.
Councillor Waugh, are you good with that?
Yeah. Just to clarify quickly, this will require that this was included in the 2021 budget. This full amount. Perfect. Thank you. Council,
any further questions? If not, there is a request to accept it for information. Councillor Ostashik.
I'd like to move that committee accept the Municipal Internship Program 2021 intake report for information.
Thank you, Councillor Ostashik. Councillor Nelson.
Could I request that this be postponed until the standing committee meeting of January 19th?
Would you care to speak to that, Councillor Nelson?
I just have questions, and based on the comments from Director Fox, I have more questions about it, and I'm not prepared well enough to ask them on the fly, and I don't think administration's prepared well enough to answer them on the fly. So I think it's just well advised to be confident in approving this. It could come back in a week and have an opportunity to ask those questions. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Nelson. And I'll just wait, administration, if you wouldn't mind, whenever you're able to pop that up on the screen so that we can read it, and then we'll go to any questions or concerns from council. So there is a request that the Municipal Internship Program 2021 intake request be postponed until January 19th, 2021. a week from today. Thank you very much. As soon as that's off the screen, perfect. Council, any discussion on that? Councillor Ostashik.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I won't be speaking in favor of the proposed postponement. I realize there's questions that need to be answered. They could perhaps be answered in a different way. I'm not sure that it's that important to me personally to make a decision on the proposed direction to have those questions answered. The internship's already been discussed. It formed part of the 2021 budget. It's within the proposed budgeted amount, and we're simply accepting this report for information anyway. There's no decision required to go with it. So I'd rather just make the vote and move on. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ostashik. Council, any further discussion on the request for postponement for a week? Seeing none, we will call that to question. All those in favor, please. Oh, I'll reread it, but then I'll need the screen taken down. That the Municipal Internship Program 2021 intake be postponed until January 19th, 2021 Standing Committee meeting. All right, Council, I will call that to question. All those in favor, please indicate. And all those opposed? And that is defeated 2-5. With Councillor Nelson and Councillor Race in favor. Council, any further discussion or questions on that item? Seeing none, we will move on.
Sorry, point of order. We still have to vote on the original direction.
Sorry. Yes, absolutely. You are correct, Councillor Nelson. I appreciate that. If administration, if we could have that brought back up again. There we go. Yes. The direction on the floor that committee accept the Municipal Internship Program 2021 intake report for information. Council, any further discussion on that before I call it to question? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate. And that is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. And now we will move on to our second action items, the capital project reports server replacement found on page 130 to 132. And I will turn that over to Ms. Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Direction was also provided at the December 15th special meeting at council to bring back a report on the server replacement scheduled for 2022. Originally scheduled for 2020, this project was deferred to 2022 in order to manage cash flow during the pandemic. Due to an addition error in the 2021 budget presented to council, there was some confusion on the amount spent and the amount remaining. To date, no money has been spent on the server replacement, though a small amount was used to expand RAM memory in order to support that deferral to 2022. Ms. Fox is also present tonight to assist in answering any of council's questions. Thank you.
Perfect.
And Ms. Schaefel as well is here. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Olson. I do have Councillor Nelson up.
I'd like to direct that council accepts this report on the server replacement for 2022 as information. If I could speak to it, I appreciate this coming forward. Just builds in a level of confidence while still letting us approve the budget within the calendar year before the budget was adopted. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Nelson. Council, any further questions or comments on the recommended action? Reading that over, that council accepts the capital projects report server replacement for 2022 as information. Council, any last minute discussion on that? Seeing none, I will call that to question. All those in favor, please indicate. And that is carried unanimously. Very good. Thank you very much, Councillor Nelson. Thank you, administration. And that brings us to council reporting. So we will begin with council, and I will start with Councillor Waugh.
Nothing to report this week and no urgent matters. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Councillor Waugh. Over to Councillor Haas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have nothing to report. I do, however, as an urgent matter, and it was brought up by our Citizens Minute with Council. And I'm just wondering if there is, I noticed that the town of Edson, the mayor, sent a letter of support to the provincial government in regards to considering regional, in the future, regional numbers and stuff. And I'm wondering if, as a council, maybe having a few minute discussion as to whether or not there's a flavor to also support our businesses. I think it's reasonable for the small businesses to ask those ones that are closed to consider that we have worked hard to keep our numbers down. And a lot of those businesses, you know, hairdressing and others, were taking quite extensive measures to reduce the spread of COVID. And I'm just wondering if the rest of council and if our mayor is interested in, because I would support a letter of recommendation to the province as well from our town. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haas. I'll jump in queue to speak on that one. I certainly would be supportive. I know it's been a topic of conversation amongst a number of people in the last couple of weeks. You know, we've been talking about students coming back into large scale schools, you know, in institutions ranging anywhere from 400 to, you know, in the city's cases, 2,500, 3,000 people. And yet we're trying to weigh the common sense factor against, you know, a mom and pop restaurant where you can seat, you know, 10, 12 people. You know, how does that, where's the common sense, right? And trying to balance that against safety. So it's, that's something I would certainly support. Council, any comments or discussion, thoughts on that? Councillor Ostashik.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would support having this brought forward as a discussion item at a future meeting. I'm not prepared at this time to support any kind of letter encouraging the provincial government to make changes in regards to regionalization or relaxing or enhancing or anything like that until we have a more formalized discussion. I mean, I've got concerns about regional rules just based on the amount of confusion it would bring depending on which town you're in, whether stuff is open or not, or whether you're allowed to do stuff or not. So without a further more in-depth discussion, I wouldn't be prepared to support anything today. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ostashik. Councillor Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would be in support of it as long as it took into consideration public safety and public health and all of those things. Understanding the next update, I think, is the 21st of January. So ultimately leaving this for a future discussion item is likely going to miss that deadline. I think we're not epidemiologists, we're not doctors, we don't really have the information. But sending a letter that requests strong consideration be given to just looking at it, right? Making sure that they're considering that rather than just rubber stamping the current and existing restrictions province-wide. So I would be in support of something happening sooner than later. Understand it's likely going to be relatively generic, and you know we're not going to ask them specific things because we don't have the tools to do that. In a discussion item a week from now, we still won't have the tools to do that. So at this point, I would support the mayor sending something. So thank you.
Councillor Haas.
Yeah, and that's the intent. I was, you know, is looking if and when restrictions are going to be laid out to consider, you know, just being a voice for the small business owners that in our communities. I mean, definitely, I don't want to dictate. I don't want to, you know, what the provincial government does, but is to be a voice I mean, I realize that as a small business owner coming to municipal government, I mean, we don't have the say in the restrictions that are currently on, but I think being able to just ask the province to consider, you know, when and if making for future decisions, that they consider, you know, towns, small towns in those decisions as to whether the numbers, I mean, there was a time when they were looking at different colors and they had you know, in the region, and that shifted us at that point to certain restrictions where other communities weren't yet. But I think just being a voice to, hey, you know what, you know, we need you to consider this in the future, you know, and what the provincial government does, by all means, you know, it's the public safety that's the most important thing. But I do agree that I think we should be a voice as best as possible, and the timelines are short. So how it's worded, I'm not sure. I think, you know, Mayor Zahara, you know, did put the letter out there and was able to take a look at it and see, and it was very well worded, and just considering future restrictions, considering that, you know, numbers and regions. So thank you.
Councillor Race.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have nothing to report, but I do have a question for administration.
No, sorry, Councillor Race. Sorry, I thought I saw your hand in speaking to Councillor Hawes's question.
No.
Oh, okay. My apologies. Council, any further points of discussion on Councillor Hawes's urgent information? Okay.
Councillor Magoo?
Yes. Oh, Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had reached out to CAO Olson earlier today, looking to potentially draft some sort of letter, high-level letter from myself. But since this is at a council level, this is our opportunity. If there's an appetite from council for us to put forward a direction of a unified council stating that the Hinton Town Council send a letter to the provincial government regarding concerns on the regulations for COVID-19. I think it would be prudent for us to do that publicly, you know, so it doesn't just come from me. As the mayor, it's a bit of a gray area. I can send a letter on behalf for myself, or I can send it on behalf of the town of Hinton with your support. So I believe this shouldn't just be for me. This is about our council collectively, and it seems like there's an appetite. Councillor Hawes, thank you for bringing it up. So I think we should put forward a direction that town council send a letter of concern, you know, regarding the regulations for COVID-19 and its effects on businesses. And if that's the will, I highly encourage a councillor to make that direction right now, and I can draft something and pass it by council for any for a second look and bring something forward.
Mr. Mayor, just to clarify, I think you were dangerously close to a direction there, but you were not, in fact, making one, correct?
No, I think if it's a direction from town council, I think a councillor should direct that, because I could write one for just myself on behalf of the community without specifying this is from town council. So I really turn it to Councillor Hawes. He brought it up. I think it's a good opportunity for him to potentially lead that.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I do have Councillor Hawes up next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I would like to make the direction, if I may. Wendy? Thank you. The town council will send a letter of concern to the provincial government regarding the regulations of COVID-19 and its effects on small business. That looks good. Thank you. And maybe, sorry, if I may, sorry, Wendy. But just to clarify, it's in regards to the maybe, you know, future considerations of restrictions or something like that. Regarding the regulations of COVID, yeah. Yeah, and it's, so the town council send a letter of concern to the provincial government regarding future considerations of restrictions of COVID-19 and its effects on small businesses. Yeah, if we put that in there. And I'm looking if there's anything addition or amendments that anybody sees there, or Mr. Mayor or CEO Olson, please, by all means.
Councillor Hawes, if you want to read that over one time just to make sure that conforms to what you were looking for.
Yeah, that looks good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, administration. Thank you, Councillor Hawes. Councillor Hawes, did you want to speak to that?
I just, you know what, I appreciate, I know it wasn't on the agenda, but I appreciated the minute with council. And I too myself have been thinking a lot about, you know, especially with the additional 2 weeks, you know, and as Councillor Magoon mentioned, you know, when we look at schools opening, and I've really looked at a lot of, you know, especially the business that the citizen referred to, you know, the amount of measures that were taken prior even to the lockdown and then the closure of those businesses. And I think it's only right that they be considered, and then because they are businesses that are, you know, they're on a thin road, I believe, right now, just, and if who knows what's going to be in 2 weeks. So thank you. And I appreciate the support from the rest of council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hawes. Council, any further discussion on that? Councillor Ostashik.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. As previously indicated, I would have much rather had a discussion about what the letter was going to entail and what we were going to actually request from the province. But in listening to the rest of council speak and about the timelines, which I hadn't really considered when the next revision of recommendations is going to come out, I will be supporting this. I do think that unless there's some valid, legitimate reasons for not being able to allow the personal services sector to reopen to at least a limited amount, there definitely should be some additional consideration into whether they're operating or not is a true risk or not. So I will be supporting this, although I would have rather had the opportunity to have an opportunity to discuss it first. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Councillor Ostashik. Council, any further discussion or questions or comments on that? Seeing none, then we'll reread the direction that Town Council send a letter of concern to the provincial government regarding future consideration of restrictions of COVID-19 and its effects on small businesses. Council will call that to question. All those in favor, please indicate. And that is carried unanimously. Thank you very much, Councillor Hawes. Mr. Mayor, thank you for your work on that. Council, thanks for your discussion, and we will we'll look to making sure that Councillor Hawes, are you wrapped up with your reports?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm all finished.
Perfect. Thank you, Councillor Hawes. We will move on to Councillor Ostashik next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did have a couple meetings in the last week. I had a Hinton Regional Economic Development Coalition meeting with a few things that came out of that. Sorry, 1 second. There's an update from Nancy Robbins of Community Futures West Yellowhead, who indicated that they're still handing out the it's probably better spoken to by one of the Community Futures Council reps, but they're still working on the Regional Relief Recovery Fund loans from Community Futures. They've approved 42 applications and dispersed $1.491 million in loans. Another item that came out of that meeting was that the Chamber of Commerce is working on a revival of the Hinton First campaign. So you may remember that. That's the campaign for citizens to consider Hinton First when they're shopping, when they're recreating, and basically just consider spending their time and money in their hometown. part of the new revival of the Hinton First campaign is potentially a request to the citizens to look at spending their dollars locally in terms of the challenges that COVID is presenting to our business community. Some incentives, some information, some requests to spend their money locally. The other thing that came out of that meeting was a discussion regarding a report that was prepared called Conquering the Digital Divide, that was prepared in November of 2020. It basically entailed some of the advantages that the town of Hinton has in being able to attract technological tech companies, tech individuals, with the advantages that we have with our high-speed internet access and being able to attract those individuals, companies to our province or to our community. It's a very interesting report, and I look forward to where that's going to go moving forward. The other meeting was the Boardwalk Committee meeting. I'm not going to say too much other than the group undertook a couple exercises to try and narrow down some of the recommendations that are going to be coming back to council. And we're getting very close to having that coming back to council. And I believe we're actually having a little opportunity to touch base after the council meeting tonight so that we can move forward. That's about all I have. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, Councillor Ostashik. We'll move on to Councillor Race.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have nothing to report on. I do have a question for administration, though. When our citizens phone us and ask us a question, we're asked to have them contact Hinton Listens or contact administration themselves. And today I was talking to a citizen and she said, you know, Hinton Listens really works. She asked the question, they got back to her, and I go, good, what'd they say? So is administration working on anything where councillors would also get the answers to the questions that citizens are asking? You know, they get the answer, so one person gets the answer. If we also got the answer, we, you know, would be able to share it with maybe 100, 200 people. So is anything being done so that we can be included in the answer? Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if it's okay, I'll speak to
Yes,
Councillor Race's question. So at this time, there's no program or process that's being considered to be put in place to share answers to citizens' questions with all of council as well. The way we use Hinton Listens through the communications department is to review the nature of the inquiries or concerns or requests for service that are coming through and determine if there are any trends or you know, multiple items regarding the same topic, and then that impacts the communications that we put out to the community as well. So we'll alter what's included in the many bulletins and civic sends, Facebook posts, content on the website, and that to reflect what we're seeing as far as confusion or you know, just information sharing purposes. This is something that I can take away and reflect on with our administration and see if there's anything additional that we can put forward. I do share information quite regularly with council as well, and do sometimes incorporate the things that we're seeing or the questions that were coming forward to administration. I would have to reflect on that and see what could be put in place given the number of Hinton Listens items that come through. It's not just information requests through an email to through Hinton Listens. There are also requests for service. There are a couple of different ways that citizens can interact with administration in that regard. With that said, if there are any questions that you're seeing as well as council, please direct them my way. I know I do my best to get back in a timely fashion, and we'll continue to try and prioritize that. But if it's all right, I don't really have an answer other than this is what we're doing, and I can take this away and speak to our team and see what else we can consider moving forward.
Thank you.
Councillor Race, anything further? Perfect. We will move on to Councillor Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I too had Beaver Boardwalk Committee meeting yesterday. Certainly fast and furious, making sure that we utilize the grant that we have. So looking forward to the next couple of days of conversations and see where we get to. And just for all the hordes of public that are watching, I did want to remind everybody there's a BSN meeting on Thursday morning at 8:30 with Doug Griffiths. If anybody hasn't had the opportunity to listen and hear Doug Griffiths speak, it is he's one of the best, and he understands the Alberta context and the Hinton context as well as anybody. So I would just encourage anybody to sign up. There's a million places. It's on Facebook and Eventbrite and everywhere else. So I would just encourage everybody to attend. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do want to thank Councillor Race for bringing that up. I think there are opportunities, whether it's information items in the future or something, but it could be a valuable asset to share more info. And I appreciate CA Olson reflecting on that. And BSN, I'm looking forward to Mr. Griffiths. He's a great speaker. So thank you, Councillor Nelson, for sharing that. I also had BBO and HREDC. The only thing I'll add for HREDC is just, I think we can't say it enough. This Regional Relief and Recovery Fund is critical. 0% loans, some you don't have to pay back. This is part of the process. I'm not saying it's perfect from a federal or provincial aspect for businesses. I think there's a lot of work to be done on all levels, but this is an amazing program, and Community Futures has done so much work. So spread the word. A lot of businesses don't know about these programs sometimes. So the more the better. They are flooded with applications, so it's starting to grow. Again, thank you to Nancy and all of her staff. Great work, and please take advantage of it. I had a respite care. It's an informal meeting. I want to really thank Karen Bouchard and her team, really focusing on a need that our community and many rural communities have. And that's really providing the training and the care for those in need for respite. So some of the target goals they're looking at in the next 3 to 4 months is to create a database of information sharing for those who provide the service within our community. So then if you're a family and you need respite care service, you can go to one place that will direct you, hey, person A, B, C, and D, they do this. You can reach them there, because right now it doesn't exist. If you try to find somebody, they have to market themselves, and it's a little bit more challenging. So really looking forward to that. They're putting together a training program in order to train more people who want to deliver that service, which is great. And adding a meet and greet, an annual meet and greet for families, people who are dealing with this, to get together and create these liaisons. So amazing work, really happy, FCSS. And like I said, all the staff who are part of this, great work. So really proud of that, and it's moving forward, and I'm excited to see, I know Councillor Race was part of this in the beginning. I'm looking forward to see where this is going to end up in 2021. And that's all, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. For myself, fairly simple. I want to express my appreciation to both Fire Chief and Director Todd Martins, and also Staff Sergeant Chris Murphy. They're in the middle of, we're back and forth accommodating schedules, more so my schedule. They've been extremely accommodating just in terms of shifting that policing meeting time around. So please accept my appreciation for that due to my work commitments. So thanks for that. And once we have that hammered out, Council, and we attend I attend my first meeting on that behalf, I'll give you an update. So other than that, we will move on to Ms. Fox.
Thank you, Councillor Magoon. I just wanted to quickly clarify, as I made a comment on the intern report earlier, and I just want to make sure I have the right information out there. The one point I want, just so that the people that might still be confused, I think when I made the comment about the intern overall amount being paid, I said it was $10,000 less. And I think that's where the confusion came in. It's almost $10,000 more. And that's why the contribution amount is different. So if council still has questions about that and they'd like to send us an email on that, please be welcome to do so.
Thank you very much. We will move on to CAO report and status report. Ms. Olson.
Thank you. Not too much to share tonight. Just wanted to provide a reminder that town buildings remain open by appointment only at this time. That's still in place. That hasn't changed moving out of the Christmas holiday. We are going to review this through any restrictions that are revisited by the province. And just to add to that, the method having our buildings open by appointment only has really supported our organization in following that work from home component that was put forward. And so far we've been managing pretty well with the public and accommodating their needs as well. So just a reminder to the public and to everyone on that front. The other piece, just a quick update, high-level update, the Rapid Housing Initiative application that Council approved back in November has been submitted. We're awaiting results. Lots of really good work supported by administration, and we're awaiting a response. And once we've heard back on the status of that application, we'll be sharing that with Council. That's all that I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Olson. We will go to legislative services update. I don't see Ms. Rendell in here. Do we have an update today?
She is present, and I don't believe she has an update.
Yeah, no, I have nothing to report.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And I apologize, Ms. Rendell. Over to executive assistant and logistics information.
I have nothing to report either.
Excellent. Then Council, next on the agenda is adjournment. Mr. Mayor.
I'll move to adjourn.
Very well, Council. Any discussion on that point? Seeing none, then I will call that to question. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. We are adjourned at 6.